Good evening. My name is John Henry, and I'm an alcoholic. In this Code Blue Big Book Action and Study seminar, we're going to go through the first 164 pages of the Big Book, the recovery section, and we're going to do the work that the first 100 people who recovered said we have to do to overcome this hopeless condition of mind and body. I borrow heavily from the Golden Slippers, from Joe and Charlie, from Clancy, and from all of the giants who have gone before me. Now, I don't claim to be any big book guru or any kind of top 10 spiritualist. I'm just a simple drunk. I was almost dead from the disease. When I finally became willing to do the action in our book, I was able to recover and have a pretty good life. So I'm hoping that there's 2s and 3s and 4s of you listening to this together. You're going to need a big book. I like the large print big book, highlighter and pen. I'm going to try to get some of the paperwork that I've got online. And please bring your willingness. Please bring your willingness and your open mind. And as you're going to see, we open every session with the set-aside prayer so that we may be more open to receiving this information. Thanks for listening. Good evening, I'm John Alcoholic. During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now dead, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the big book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who've done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have done this before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been, in effect, left off at step 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. The study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with the set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace. Thank everybody for showing up. Now I've got Dave and Vlad have one. I do have, what are these called? Flash drives or some kind of stick. I've got my last session on these little things. If anybody missed one, and you can download these in the computer and you'll have everything set up. I'm trying to find somebody who could get them posted to YouTube for me. I think my brother-in-law might have done it, but I don't know how to find it yet. So, but I do have, and this is recordings from the last session, so it's basically what we did. Everyone is kind of the same, but a little bit different. So if you need to borrow those, I do have a few of them. These guys will bring them back, and you can have the sessions on your computer. You can email them to people, etc., etc. Last week, and thanks for coming out in the cold. Last week we talked about steps 6 and 7, and we went heavily into the 12 and 12. The 12 and 12 was written, I think, about 15 years after the Big Book. So Bill Wilson had studied with some of the great spiritual leaders of the time when he wrote the 12 and 12. And I think I was taught that the main reason he wrote that was to try to sell the fellowship on the traditions. And he also put some wonderful essays about the steps in there. And as we know, step 6 and 7 in the Big Book, we've only got the 2 little paragraphs in there, and yet these are the steps where the great change inside us takes place, right? Funny enough, after step 6 and 7 is when the book tells us that we're going to go back out into the world and right the wrongs that we have created in our life. So today we're going to talk about steps 8 and 9, but I didn't have quite time to finish last week, so I got a few notes. A little bit of this will be repeated, but in step 4, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure, right? So our first task is to become honest with ourselves, with others, and with our higher power, right? So then we go on and we do the fifth step with our sponsor. And when we've done that, we come to 6 and 7. And I started talking about this at the end of the session last week. My toolbox, when I'm out there using, and even when I was sober, when I wasn't working these steps, it was to lie, to cheat, to steal, to con, and to manipulate. Those were tools that I used. That's how I lived my life. And I talked about that if I want to get rid of my selfishness, right, I first think about that. It's like, well, how the heck am I going to get what I want, right? If I get rid of my dishonesty, keep in mind I'm a commission salesman, how the hell can I make a living, right? If I get rid of my fear, how can I face life, right? If I start considering others in front of myself, who the hell's going to take care of John? Right? So God will do for me what I cannot do for myself. He's going to help me because self can't overcome self. But God will not do for me what I can do for myself. So as far as my selfishness goes, I must practice selflessness. I must practice the opposite. As far as my dishonesty goes, I must kick myself in the ass and try to be as honest as I can in every situation. One of the people I learned from, they were telling me that they had a problem with lying, little white lies, right? And she's like, well, how can I handle these my problem of lying? And the person told her, she said, well, every time you're right in the middle of a lie, stop and say, I'm lying. And then if you do that, you're gonna stop. And I had it being a commission salesman, when I'm practicing these things, my automatic reflex is to put every sale in my name. And I mean, there were times when I'm on my way home and I had to turn around and drive back to the shop and say, look here, I put this sale in my name, but this is actually yours. And I had to do that over and over again until finally it became easier for me just to put the sale in the person's name the first time, right? But I had to go through the process of going back and doing that. As far as the fear, because I had a lot of fears, I had to practice courage. So I have to do stuff that I'm afraid to do, right? As far as, consideration, I have to start considering other people before myself. When I did this step 6 and 7, I'm looking at it, I did not think that I would have any personality left if I got rid of what made me, right? But funny enough, if I get rid of my flaws and my defects, with God's help, of course, because I need God's help, God's going to let the opposite flow in, right? So my mental habits in 6 and 7, they must be broken by working against myself. And again, I do that with God's help. I kind of look at it as a partnership with God, right? So I have to try to be more honest. I have to try to be more giving. I have to try to be more considerate. And I always pray for His help in doing this. I've got to cast aside my old ideas and let the new ones take over, and this is a process. 6 and 7 are tools of change and acceptance. 2 little sentences in the big book, but perhaps the 2 biggest steps that we can take, right? I mean, I'm at the end of my using. I wanted to kill myself because I could not accept what I had done and what I had become and how I was living my life, right? I cannot continue to be dishonest and expect God to take away my dishonesty. I can't keep lying and expect God to take it away. Hey, God, take it away. I just told another lie. I can't continue to be selfish and expect God to take that away. I can't continue to be inconsiderate of other people and expect God to take that away. I must practice the opposite of what my nature has been my whole life. Now, I realize a lot of people aren't, they didn't go to the extremes that I did, but we all, to some extent, have to do this. I become different by doing these things, right? By doing these different things, by acting honest, by being selfless, by practicing giving, by becoming loving, by acting humble, right? They say that reborn, right? That means that the old John has to die and the new John has to be reborn. 4 and 5 show us what needs to be changed. In 6 and 7, the change takes place. And as we read last week, it's a lifetime job, right? So I've got to work against myself with God's help. Again, my commission sales, I would go back to the shop and I would say, hey man, this is your sale. I shouldn't have taken it, right? If you practice 6 and 7, right, you got to be careful because I am now responsible for what I am, what I say, and what I do and how I act. I can no longer blame other people, right? A good practicing alcoholic that I was, I got to blame other people. Remember my resentments? I would play situations over in my head over and over again until the other person got all the blame and I came out as white as the driven snow. I can no longer blame other people. My victimhood is gone, right? So I can change these things with God's help. Steps 4 through 7, I think, are the greatest tools to effect change that one can possibly have. And the question is, do I live in harmony with God or disharmony? Do I live in harmony with the world or disharmony, right? I always say, steps 1, 2, and 3, they got me right with God. 4, 5, 6, 7, they got me right with me. As we're going to see today, 8 and 9 are going to get me right with you and the world around me. And then 10, 11, and 12 are going to keep me right with God, me, and you. So I think we are now ready to dive back into the book on steps 8 and 9. Oh, I'm sorry, I wanted this sheet that I handed out last week. This is something that when you get back from work or you're going to bed or something, it does not hurt to take a look at this little sheet on character defects, right? Because at the end of the day, I want to move over to the right from the left. So I look at my character defects or shortcomings. Today, was I selfish and self-seeking, or did I express interest in others? Was I dishonest, or was I more honest? Was I full of fear, or did I display some courage? Did I let my pride get the best of me, or did I exhibit some humility? Did I ask God what His will is and try to carry that out? Was I inconsiderate or considerate? Was I greedy or was I giving? Lustful or pure? Angry or calm, envious or grateful, lazy, or did I have action? Was I gluttonous, or did I practice moderation? These, and as we work through the program and we look at this little sheet, we can make little check marks, and we're never going to be all the way to one side or the other. But what we would like to do is we would like to see patient improvement moving towards the side of the program principles. And it kind of helps me just to look at this thing. So some of these sheets I kind of have on my little nightstand that I can look at sometimes in the morning and sometimes in the night, just to see how I'm doing, right? Was I condemning myself? Did I beat the hell out of myself, or did I forgive myself? I say, hey, I'm human, I'm going to make mistakes. I tried to fix what I did wrong, and I want to move on. Was I suspicious of everybody, or was I trusting? Did I doubt that God's gonna help me out, or did I have some faith? Was I covetous, or did I express charity or generosity? Did I disrespect people, or did I give them respect? So this is just kind of a nice little thing that we can use to see how we're doing, and how hopefully over time how we come up with patient improvement. Let's see here. So we get, with step 6 and 7, we get to live 2 lives in one lifetime. Most people, I've discovered that most people, whether they're alcoholics and they're in the program or not, are sick. They're sick, right? They're sick in self. And most people, again, whether they're alcoholics or not, they go to the grave not knowing what is wrong with them, right? We, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we have a program, and we get to find out what's the matter with us, and we get a program on how we can fix it. So we are very, very lucky people. And again, once you practice steps 6 and 7, we are responsible, right? And if I do stay selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, fearful, and inconsiderate, it must be because I want to be that way, right? And again, I can no longer blame other people, right? I can only blame myself for how I act and what I do. All right, I think that's it, and we are going to run to the book and do Steps 8 and 9 today. So steps 8 and 9 are where we go back out into the world, right? And we fix the mess that we've made. Or try to make it right anyway. See if we can make some amends. So let me see where I am here.
John, are we doing it in the big book or the 12 steps?
Big book. Big book. We are right after the 7-step prayer. So there we are, page 76. We're on page 76, right? And again, guys, as soon as you do the 5th step with your sponsor, the way what I was taught, you go home and maybe sit for an hour, but almost immediately we want to do the steps 6 and 7. So with some of my sponsees, we even did it almost right after the 5th step, and I didn't even give them a chance. We just got on our knees and did it. But we want to do 6 and 7, I think, as soon after the 5th step as we can, if not immediately. So we are, we're the 3rd paragraph about the middle of the page on page 76. Everybody there? All right. So we have now completed step 7. Yeehaw. We did that last week. So everybody who was here, we did it for real. So, and if you weren't here, you can do it when you get home tonight. Now we need more action, without which we find, underline, faith without works is dead. Okay, we're going to see that. And you can, next to that, you can write King James Bible. I'm not a big Bible guy, but I think it's King James Bible 2:14:26, I believe. You can Google it. But faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. Okay, let's underline the next 4 lines. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. So next to that line that we just highlighted, we made it when we took inventory, write step 4. Right? So, I had some sheets that say step 8, but all they are is they're just lines on them. So you can take a notebook, and what I did is I transferred all of the names and institutions from my resentment list, from my fear list, and from my harms list. And then you sit down and you talk it over with your sponsor and see which of those people that you owe amends to. For me, I got to tell you guys, just about everybody that I disliked, that I was resentful for, was on my 8-step list. So we can go ahead and write them all out. And then we can talk to our sponsor and kind of discover which ones that we need to go make amends to. And this is something that we really need help with. I mean, if you ever, steps 4 and 5, of course you do, but steps 8 and 9, we really need sponsors' help. We are not to run out trying to do something to make ourselves feel better unless we discuss it with our sponsor first, because we can cause more damage if we do that, rather than we think and you talk it over with somebody before we go out. And we've got to know, when we go to somebody, we've got to know exactly what we did. We can't just go out to anybody and say, hey man, I treated you badly, sorry for that. No, we want to know, we want to go to them and say, this is what I did, right? So we can write all those names out in institutions, and we talk it over with our sponsor. So let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we harmed and whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. Underline the next line too. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal, right? So that's still step 4. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated, highlight to the end of the paragraph, out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any length for victory over alcohol. That's why I have all of my sponsors, we go, whenever we start this process, at the beginning of the book, are you willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol, and if it applies, and drugs? And then I have them sign it and date it. So when they start bulking about doing some of these harder things, I say, flip to the front, see what you sign, because your life is getting a lot better, so we have to continue going further. Now, where it said, if we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes, right next to that, write prayer. That's a prayer, right? You know, God, I really don't want to go to this person and make amends. I don't, would you please give me the courage and the willingness to do this? Or, you know, something of that nature. So that's a prayer. Because again, you know, self cannot overcome self. We're going to need some help getting the courage to do these things. Probably there are still some misgivings. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, highlight the next two lines. We may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. Just that little line there. And diffident, you can kind of circle that and draw a little arrow down. That means lacking self-confidence. Lacking self-confidence. And then also next to that we just highlighted, write the word fear. Right? And it's normal. We're gonna feel some fear. We are. And you know, I used to think, you know, when I read about men of faith having courage, I used to think, well, if people have faith, then they don't need any courage, right? They don't need any courage to go out and do these things because they got faith. Well, you know, as it turns out, you know, how much faith does God give us to do things? Just barely enough. Barely enough. So you bet we need courage to go out and do these things. Absolutely we do. Let us be reassured. To some people, we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. Right? I mean, I'm not going to, hey, you know, remember when Ebby Thatcher went to Bill? Bill got all pissed off. I got religion, Bill, right? So, I mean, again, we've got to talk this over with our sponsor before we run out to anybody. We got to figure out what our angle of approach is going to be. We might prejudice them. At the moment, we are trying to put our lives in order, but this is not an end in itself. Highlight this next sentence. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. Okay, so highlight that. I read that wrong for 3 years. For 3 years, I thought it said, my purpose is to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. When I read it that way, you know, my purpose is to be that means that I think I know what I'm supposed to do, right? No, I work these steps and I fit myself, and hopefully God's going to figure out how He can use me, He or she or God, whatever, can use me to help others, right? That's one of those things where somebody snuck into my room in the middle of the night and changed this big book around. It happens all the time when I reread it. That wasn't there yesterday. So, you know, and you don't need to write this, but somebody, you know, one of the guys when I first sobered up, he said, John, God kept us alive for a purpose. And he said, once you have worked the steps for the first time, you are the most qualified person on the planet to help another alcoholic, right? And of course, that was because he was having me raise my hand when I was newly working these steps. And he taught me that once I made 2 amends, that I could raise my hand and sponsor people. So after I had done my second amend, he said, you raise your hand whenever they ask in meetings who's willing to be a sponsor. And, you know, I never forget when I raised my hand, and that guy who was here, Eric, you know, I kind of raised my hand a little bit, and it was a Saturday night meeting, and I was getting up and getting ready to boot out of the meeting, and he tapped me on the shoulder, and he asked me to sponsor him, right? And I was absolutely terrified. I was both terrified and I was angry. I wanted to call my sponsor up and go, you son of a bitch, you're going to take care of this guy because I'm going to kill him, right? You know, so, you know, but I did talk to him, and he kind of laughed about it, and he said, you know, number one, it's not up to you, it's up to Eric and it's up to God. And if Eric does the work, he's going to get better. All you can do is show him what to do. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. He says, all you do is you do exactly what we did in Code Blue. You meet him once a week and you go through the book. Now, if he's in a lot of danger, you think of drinking, then you've got to go through it 3 times or 4 times as fast as we did in Code Blue. But if you think if he's going to be okay, okay, you can go through it, but you have to, you should get it done in 3 to 4 months. And again, if you're worried about them, then you get it done in 2 to 4 weeks, because you can go through these steps as fast as you want. What we don't want to do, I know that if I waited, in my history, whenever I was sober for a while and I got my job back and I got money in my pocket and my ego came back, I would always say the same thing: I don't need to do that crap, and I wouldn't do it. And then sooner or later, things would build up, and I would drink. So I really like to get people when they're willing, which is usually after they just got out of jail or they just got out of divorce court or something of that nature, and we walk them through these steps as quickly as we can. So our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. It is seldom wise to approach an individual who still smarts from our injustice to him and announce that we have gone religious. In the prize ring, this would be called leading with the chin. Why lay ourselves open to being branded fanatics or religious bores? We may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message, but our man is sure to be impressed. Underline the next, 7 words. A sincere desire to set right the wrong. Okay, so next to that we're going to write amend. Right? That's a good definition of an amend. It's not saying, hey man, I'm sorry. I guess we could put that in there, but we want to, what can I do to make it right? And I just heard a woman talk the other day, and she just blew me away. She said that one of the things that her sponsor taught her to do when we go to these people is we say, I was wrong, right? I was wrong. That's what we say. I was wrong. This is what I did, and that was wrong. How can I make it right, right? And I will give you just a couple of scripts as we go on a little further. There's no definite scripts. It's something you can kind of talk with your sponsor about. But a sincere desire to set right the wrong. We got to fix it. He is going to be more interested in a demonstration, underline, of goodwill. And next to of goodwill, write action. Write action. Then in our talk of spiritual discoveries. Right? So, if I owe somebody money, right, and I go to them and say, hey, I'm really sorry that I didn't pay you that $500. I'm in a spiritual program now. I just, I better have some money there and say, hey, I'm going to give you this little bit right now, and I'm going to pay you as I can go, right? We've got to have a demonstration of goodwill. We don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God. When it will serve any good purpose, we are willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense. Okay, so now right there, let's write 5 types of amends. 5 types of amends. Just write it right where I stopped reading. Because Bill talks about the 5 major types of amends. And we're going to highlight the next sentence, which is the question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. Okay, so right next to that we can write number 1, enemy. Enemy. That's the first of 5 amends that Bill's going to talk about. The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. It may be he has done us more harm than we have done him, and though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, we are still not too keen about admitting our faults. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. It is harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. Okay, so we're going to write a little script off to the right. I regret that I... ... What can I do to make it better? I regret that I... ... What can I do to make it better? And I'll give you another little script on the next page too, but these are just, some ideas. I regret that I... ... What can I do to make it better? Okay, so let's highlight the next 4 lines. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply, we tell him that we will never get over drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. Just highlight to there. Because, if we really hate this guy or this person and we think that they've done us more harm, You know, our nature is going to say, if you hadn't have done that to me, God darn it. That's what we want to say, but the book tells us that we can't do that. We are there to sweep off our side of the street. Okay, at the bottom we're going to write one more thing. We're going to write, what can I do to go forward? What can I do to go forward? Question mark. Just another little phrase. What can I do to go forward? We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. Okay, let's highlight the next 3 lines. Do so, never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. Okay, so again, let's just write my side of the street next to that. My side of the street. And at the top of the page, let's write must work on willingness. Must work on willingness, 6, 7, and 8. Must work on willingness, 6, 7, and 8. And then next to that, highlighting my side of the street. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. And then we can bracket the next 3 lines, or I guess you could highlight them. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Next to that, we're going to write 9th-step promise. That's a 9th-step promise. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Because our fear is going to tell us that it's going to be horrible. Our fear is going to tell us that we're going to catastrophize it, and the guy's going to freak out on us. There's going to be a big scene. Maybe he'll punch me, right? That's what our fear is going to tell us. But in 9 cases out of 10, we're going to get good results. Sometimes the man we are calling upon admits his own fault, so feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Highlight the next little line. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. Right? So we're gonna feel great when we go out and do this. Right? I mean, people let their fear prevent them from going forward with these steps. They're missing one of the most wonderful parts of this program of going out to people in 8 and 9. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we are doing and wish us well. Occasionally they will offer assistance. It should not matter, however, highlight, if someone does throw us out of his office. Just highlight that little line. We have made our demonstration, done our part, it's water over the dam. Okay, so next to does throw us out of the office, let's write, off to the left, let's write outcome of amend isn't dependent upon the result. Outcome of amend isn't dependent upon the result.
One more time.
Outcome of amend isn't dependent upon the result. So if somebody does throw us out of their office, right? This guy, I've been avoiding him. I've been walking to the other side of the street. I've been afraid of seeing him. If I go to that guy, calm, frank, and open, and I say, look, I was wrong. This is what I did. I would like to make it right. He does not accept that. That's okay. I've done my part, and now my fear is gone. Right? What a wonderful feeling being free of the fear of seeing this guy. And it's going to tell us a little later that we're not going to be scraping or servile, right? So we've done our part, and that's all we can do. He's not going to accept it. That's on him. It's no longer on us. Okay, so let's draw a little line under demonstration, and let's write creditors, amend number 2. So amend number 2, the second type of amend is creditors. And we're going to highlight the first 2 little sentences. Most alcoholics owe money. We do not dodge our creditors. Just highlight that. And again, creditors, amend number 2. So that's kind of the understatement of the century there. Most alcoholics owe money, right? A lot of us do. And we do not dodge our creditors. Telling them what we are trying to do, we make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. Again, let's highlight the next sentence. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Right? So that's another little kind of 9-step promise there, right? Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we are sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must, lose our fear, underline fear, of creditors no matter, and then highlight to the end of the paragraph, no matter how far we have to go, for we are liable to drink if we are afraid to face them. So this is telling, it's the book's telling us that, and Bill's seen this over and over again, we're afraid to go to these people, our fear is going to get the best of us, and there's a chance that we might drink again. So we've got to do it. Now, we're going to write something. A fellow named Chet taught me this. At the bottom of the page, write the word creditor with a little arrow. And we're going to write, take care of family first. If there is any left, it goes to creditors. Right? So we're not going to let our family go hungry. So creditor, a little arrow. Take care of family first. If there is any left, it goes to creditors. And again, I'm gonna say this again. I said it at the outset. These are things that I was taught, and if it's not written in the book, if it's not in the book, then it's either my opinion or somebody else's opinion, and you can take it or leave it. But if it's written, if it's in this book in print, then we had better take it to the bank. But I like this one that Chet told me enough where I think it's very true. Take care of family first. If there's any left, it goes to creditors. Okay, so draw a little line under are afraid to face them, and we're going to write type 3 jailer / criminal activity. Type 3 jailer / criminal activity. Perhaps we have committed a criminal offense which might land us in jail if it were known to the authorities. We may be short in our accounts and unable to make good. We have already admitted this in confidence to another person, right? We did that in step 5. And then highlight the next 2 lines. But we are sure we would be imprisoned or lose our job if it were known. Just that little line there. Maybe it's only a petty offense, such as padding the expense account. Most of us have done that sort of thing. Maybe we are divorced and have remarried but haven't kept up the alimony to number 1. She is indignant about it and has a warrant out for arrest. That's a common form of trouble too. Okay, so we're going to write a little script at the top of the page here, so write small. And again, this is just something that somebody told me. Must tell people we are in AA, parentheses, spiritual program. Must tell people we are in AA, parentheses, spiritual program. Trying to do my best to get over drinking. Trying to do my best to get over drinking, and I'll repeat it. Being drunk made me a less than desirable friend, son, employee, ... right? Wife, husband, whatever. What can I do to make it better? Again, no elaborate script. Must tell people we are in AA, a spiritual program. Trying to do my best to get over drinking. Being a drunk made me a less than desirable friend, son, employee, ... What can I do to make it better? Again, no elaborate script. Must tell people we are in AA, a spiritual program, trying to do my best to get over drinking. Being drunk made me a less than desirable friend, son, employee. What can I do to make it better, right? And again, we're going to say, hey man, I was wrong. What I did was wrong. We're not going to try to. And again, I know that whenever I'm going to somebody, I always want to say, well, if you hadn't have done that, right? That's what the book says, just don't do it. Bite your tongue. Must tell people we are an AA, spiritual program, trying to do our best to get over drinking. Being drunk made me a less than desirable friend, son, employee. husband, wife, you fill in the blank, what can I do to make it better? Again, there's no elaborate script, right? We kind of, and it is kind of nice that we have a plan of action that we talk over with our sponsor before we go out to people. I mean, we really should. I mean, I don't want to start babbling, right? I want to know what I'm going to say. That's a common form of trouble too. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding. Highlight to the end of the paragraph there. Reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any length to find a spiritual experience, we ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing no matter what the personal consequences may be. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be, we must, circle must, not shrink at anything. Now again, when I talked to my sponsor about this, he said, don't worry, we're not going to get you fired from your job, right? So again, we just, we do talk it over with our sponsor. You've got to support your family. You're not going to be going to jail. I mean, we're not going to do anything because other people are involved. So we always discuss this with our sponsor, and I think, right where it says we ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing no matter what the personal consequences may be. Next to that, write 8th step prayer. That's an 8th step prayer right there. Remember, we're asking God for willingness. Self cannot overcome self. And remember, our main purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and other people, and that's part of the deal. Usually, however, other people are involved. There it is. Therefore, we are not to be the hasty and foolish martyr who needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. A man we know had remarried. Because of resentment and drinking, he had not paid alimony to his first wife. She was furious. She went to court and got an order for his arrest. He had commenced our way of life, right? He's working the steps, had secured a position, and was getting his head above water. It would have been impressive heroics if he had walked up to the judge and said, here I am. We, underline that we, okay? So that means that this guy's asking advice. We thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. We, again, underline we suggested he write his first wife admitting his faults and asking forgiveness. Underline admitting his faults and asking forgiveness, right? He did, and also sent a small amount of money. Also underline that. Also spent a small amount of money. He told her what he would try to do in the future. He said he was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted. Of course, she did not, and the whole situation has long since been adjusted. Now, do you think that would have been the outcome if he wouldn't have put any money in there? Right? So he made a gesture. At the bottom of the page, let's write, forgiveness is the principle behind step 9. Forgiveness is the principle behind step 9. And I guess if I didn't say it, brotherly love is step 8. Brotherly love, and then forgiveness is the principle behind step 9. So again, they're getting advice, right? I mean, it doesn't come out and necessarily talk about sponsors in the book, but I know if you listen to Bill Wilson and all his talks, he always considered Ebby Thatcher his sponsor, as Ebby helped him through the steps in the town's hospital. So yeah, this guy's getting advice. We're not running out and doing anything on our own. Before taking drastic action which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. If we have obtained permission, have consulted with others, asked God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must, circle must, not shrink. Okay, so again, I mean, if other people are involved, I mean, if you're putting your livelihood at risk, you've got your family that you've got to talk to. Maybe you went out and committed some sort of crime with some other people, and that if you went and turned yourself in, these other people would also be put in jail. I mean, we just, there's so much we got to consider. We can't, we've got to consider other people before we do anything, and we've got to talk it over with because I bet, even if your sponsor doesn't know, you're going to find somebody in AA that has had a situation that's very similar to what you're going through. You find that person, you find out what that person did, and you take that advice and you go from there. I used to say, and even when I'm sober, somebody would ask me something and I would say, well, I think you should do this, right? Well, I got no business saying, if I don't have direct experience, I can't tell anybody what I think they should. I mean, we want to find somebody that's got direct experience in the similar situation and has actually walked the walk before we start handing out advice. This brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from a bitterly hated business rival, giving him no receipt for it. He subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as a basis for discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. Right? So next to that, in big letters, we can write selfish, right? Quotation marks, right? Or extreme selfish. But that's quite a deal there. I just wrote selfish in big letters. He felt he had done a wrong he could not possibly make right. If he opened that old affair, he was afraid it would destroy the reputation of his partner, disgrace his family, and take away his means of livelihood. What right had he to involve those dependent upon him? How could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? After consulting with his wife and partner, right, very important, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his Creator guilty of such ruinous slander. Highlight the next 3 lines. He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands, or he would soon start drinking again, and all would be lost anyhow. Right? So off to the left, let's write, must take action, or we might drink. Right? And after drink, you can put a little arrow and the word death. And some of us, we drink again, we're going to die. Must take action or we might drink, little arrow, death. Now this guy did consult with everybody involved before he did it, right? He said he talked to his wife, explained what might happen. He talked to his business partner, and he secured both of their consent because they're involved. And he did that before he went further. He attended church for the first time in many years. After the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. His action met widespread approval, and today he is one of the most trusted citizens of his town. This all happened years ago. Okay, so put a little line under a go and write 4th type, spouse or domestic. 4th type of amend is either spouse or domestic. Right, so we had enemy, we had creditor, we had jailer, criminal activity. Now we've got 4th type, spouse or domestic. The chances are that we have domestic troubles. Perhaps we are mixed up with women in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt if, in this respect, alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people, but drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, just to underline the sentence, a wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. Underline that, and right next to it, write Al-Anon. Al-Anon. It's funny. I know people at work that have people in their family who are alcoholics. And these people are sick too. How could you live with an alcoholic or be associated? I don't care if it's one of your parents or your spouse and not be sick yourself. I tell all of them that you've got to go to Al-Anon, and funny enough, they rarely ever go, right? I say, look, man, and because they talk about this person, my mom is doing this, and I say, you got to go to Al-Anon, and all we can do is tell them about it, but it's funny because in most cases they don't go, and that's too bad. How could she be anything else? The husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself. He commences to look around in the nightclubs or their equivalent for something besides liquor. Perhaps he is having a secret and exciting affair with the girl who understands. In fairness, we must say that she understands, but what are we going to do about a thing like that? A man so involved often feels very remorseful, just underline very remorseful at times, especially when he is married to a loyal and courageous girl who has literally gone through hell for him. And obviously this can go both ways, right? Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. If we are sure our wife does not know, should we tell her? Not always, we think. If she knows in a general way that we have been wild, should we tell her in detail? Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She will want to know who the woman is and where she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We are sorry for what we have done. We are sorry for what we have done. Underline, and God willing, it shall not be repeated. Okay, that underline that little sentence, and we're going to write something off to the right. My sponsor hammered this home to me. You know, when I said, "Hey, man, I'm going to go out and make this amend." We talked about it. Okay, he said, so let's write, when we make amends, we must never do the wrong again. Right? He said, before you go out and make any of these amends, you dad burn it. You know, you gotta come to the conclusion that you're never going to do something like that again. When we make amends, we must never do the wrong again. When we make amends, we must never do the wrong again. You know, we're cleaning that bag of rocks off of our back. We don't want to put another one in there, right? When we make amends, we must never do the wrong again. God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that we cannot do. We have no right to go further. Though there may be justifiable exceptions, and though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we have often found this the best course to take. Our design for living is not a one-way street. It is as good for the wife as for the husband. If we can forget, so can she. It is better, however, that one does not needlessly name a person upon whom she can vent jealousy. Perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. No outsider can appraise such an intimate situation. It may be that both will decide that the way of good sense and loving kindness is to let bygones be bygones. Each might pray about it, having the other one's happiness uppermost in mind. Keep it always in sight that we are dealing with that most terrible human emotion, jealousy, right? Underline that, most terrible human emotion, jealousy. He's singling out that character defect as one of our worst. Good generalship may decide that the problem be attacked on the flank rather than risk a face-to-face combat. So off to the left of that paragraph, let's write, important that both of you agree and move on. Important that both of you agree and move on. Now, I mean, I've seen people that have separated, you know, when one of them gets sober, and sometimes they get back together, but sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes they don't. So let's draw a little line under the word flank there, and we're going to write fifth type of amend, or fifth type, which is family. The fifth type is family. If we have no such complication, there is plenty we should do at home. We're going to highlight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the next 6 lines. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. Certainly he must keep sober, for there will be no home if he doesn't, but he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he has so shockingly treated. You can stop highlighting there. So they're telling us here, well, let's write it at the bottom of the page. Make direct amends. My sponsor had me write make direct amends, not living amends, but I changed it to make direct amends as well as living amends. We want to make both of them. Right? But the book's telling us we got to make direct amends. So make direct amends as well as living amends. And you know, I'm sure my mom, you know, unfortunately she died before I sobered up. But I'm sure she would have said, "Oh, John, just being sober is good enough for me, right?" But I would have gone to her, and that's one of my regrets, you know, that I wasn't able to go to her and say, "Hey, I was wrong. This is what I did, Mom." But I know she would have said, "Oh, just staying sober is good enough," and I would have said, "No, my sponsor in my book tells me that's not enough, right?" Passing all understanding is the patience mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have no homes today, would perhaps be dead. So let's highlight the next 2, 4, 7 lines. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. That's what we do. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. You can stop highlighting there. So again, at the bottom of the page, make direct amends as well as living amends. And then off to the left next to that, we're going to write, we hurt more than ourselves. You know, I mean, I when I first sobered up, I didn't work these steps. You know, I didn't do 4 and 5, 6 and 7. I thought, well, I'm the only one I hurt by drinking. And, you know, how wrong was I, man? I hurt everybody that was involved with me. We hurt more than ourselves. And we discover that when we work these steps. He is like the farmer who came up out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" Right, that's us. We stopped drinking. Everything's okay now, right? Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. Highlight the next 4 lines. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fit the bill at all. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. So again, next to that, right, never criticize or insult. Never criticize or insult. It's telling us over and over again that we only talk about what we've done. Being very careful not to criticize them. Never criticize or insult. Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. Okay, highlight to the end of the paragraph. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. And next to that, we're going to write 9-step prayer. Okay, that's one that I have on my little nightstand, and I say that every morning. I say, God, please show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. And, you know, most days I fail miserably, but I keep trying. Highlight the next sentence as well. The spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. Just that little line there. So we've got to keep trying, right? So what we try to do, we just try to do the next right thing. That's all we can do. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Underline the next sentence. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. Okay? So, you know, it's going to take time. It's going to take time before people trust us again. But eventually our behavior will convince them more than our words. So those are living amends, right? Those are living, but the book says we've also got to do direct amends, eyeball to eyeball. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. Underline the top line there. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. Just underline that little line there. We don't worry about them if, circle if. We can honestly, circle honestly, say to ourselves that we would write them if, circle if again, we could. Now next to that, write the big if in question in parentheses. The big, and then put the word if in quotation marks, sorry. That's the big if, right? Some of us are going to use some of these instructions to delay and not do stuff we should. So that's the big if. We would write them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases. Highlight to the end of the paragraph and write 9-step instructions next to it. But we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. Okay, so those are 9-step instructions. I mean, that tells us everything. We're going to be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble. right? And remember, it said we're going to be calm and frank as well, and we're not going to be servile or scraping, right? If somebody demands that of us, our book says no, we're not going to do that. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone, okay? Now, those were 9-step instructions. Obviously, we're going to, these are going to be 9-step promises you can write. We read them at every meeting. If we are painstaking, let's highlight the first sentence. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, okay, above this phase, let's write the amends phase. Right? They're talking about the amends. These promises come to us as we're making our amends. We're not going to get these promises unless we've done the work. People, they say, I'm not grateful. I've been hanging around AA for years, and I'm not grateful about anything. I hate those promises. Well, have you done the work? Have you done the steps? Well, no, but I go to a lot of meetings. Well, no, we got to do the work. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. Underline, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Okay, next to that we're going to write, I am not a victim. I am not a victim. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Underline, self-seeking will slip away. Next to that, write, helping others. Helping others. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. Underline the next sentence. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Okay, next to that we're going to write, pray and trust in God. Pray and trust in God. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. So at the top of the page, we're going to write two definitions because it talks about selfishness and self-seeking. So let's write selfish equals I want what I want. Right? Selfish equals I want what I want. Self-seeking equals, and there are more definitions, but I like this one. I want you to think of me the way I want you to, not the way that I really am. I used to run around trying to get people to think I was somebody I wasn't. I want you, self-seeking equals, I want you to think of me the way I want you to, not the way that I really am. Self-seeking, I want you to think of me the way I want you to, not the way that I really am. So that we're running around like that actor, trying to get people to think we're somebody that we're not. Selfish equals I want what I want. Self-seeking, I want you to think of me the way I want you to, not the way that I really am. Okay, so I've got some notes here a little bit, and we are close, because next week is steps 10 and 11. So, step 8, right? Step 8 is a definite step, and it is brotherly love, right? Some people, I say, hey, I'm never going to make amends to these people because they hurt me more than I hurt them, right? That's dangerous. So we've got a little method for taking care of that. So again, we're going to take the names off of our 4th step. We're going to take them off of our resentment list, our fear list, our sex and harms list. All of the column 1 names, right? And we're going to ask God to help us become willing to the list. Help us become... Now remember, in the 4th and 5th step, when we got somebody that we really hate, remember the woman in the book with her mother, right? We pray for that person until that resentment goes away. We pray that they get everything that we want in our lives in their lives, right? Self cannot overcome self. We need God's help. Help me be willing. Give me the courage. Now, some people say, hey, I'm never going to ever be able to make amends to this person. So what we do is we can take our A-step list and divide it into 4 parts, right? So you can write down these 4 words, right? We're going to write down the nows, right? So like your nows might be your mom, your dad, your kids, whatever. We got nows. Then we've got laters. Then we've got maybes, and then we've got nevers, right? So we got now, later, maybe, never. So if you've got some people that you're never going to make amends to, you write your now list, you get your nows done, you're going to have the courage to go forward and do your laters. You get your laters done, you're going to have the courage to go ahead and do your maybes. And I'm telling you, you get your maybes done, that's when you're going to hit your never list, right? So if you're having problems with somebody, you separate it like this: now, later, maybe, never. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to have such good experiences, you're going to be able to build up, and you're going to get to those nevers. Again, painstaking about this phase of our development, right? When the spiritual malady is overcome, our book tells us we straighten out mentally and physically, right? That's on page 64. So I think we've got the dimensions of life here, the 3 dimensions of life. Right? And you don't need to write this, but number 1, we're spiritually sick. So we're in disharmony with God, right? Number 2, we're mentally sick. We think we have minds, but it seems like we don't use them a lot, right? We're in disharmony with ourselves because of our anger, our fear, our guilt, shame, and remorse. So we're mentally sick. And 3, we're physically sick. I used to think that was my body, but physically it's the world around me, right? It's everybody in the world around me. So we are in disharmony with God, with ourselves, and with the world around us. The steps, it seems, are made to put us back together in these 3 dimensions of life. So 1, 2, and 3, again, they get us right with God. We move from powerless to power. 4, 5, 6, and 7, we get right in our mind. We get rid of our resentments and fears, but we still have some guilt, shame and remorse in our little storeroom based upon things we've done in our drinking careers, right? So we're still restless, a little restless, irritable, and discontent about that guilt and shame. So to get right in the physical world, we go out and we make restitution. Now, some of us feel so good after doing 4, 5, 6, and 7 that we think that we don't have to go further and do 8 and 9. I felt really good after 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and I thought I was done, right? I'm done, man. I've never felt this good, right? If we don't do 8 and 9, I'm taught and I've experienced that our guilt and remorse starts to chew at us. It chews at us. And after a while, it begins to bother our relationship with others, with the world and everybody in it. And eventually it blocks us off from God, and we stand a good chance of getting drunk again. So we want to take care of that right now. Now, in the foreword to the 2nd edition, we read where Bill Wilson met Dr. Bob. Right? Now, when you read the foreword to the 2nd edition, it looks as though Dr. Bob never took another drink after Bill visited him in the summer of 1935, the first time, and they started working together. But that's not true. Bill had been working with Dr. Bob for a couple of weeks, and Dr. Bob said, hey, Bill, there's this medical convention in Atlantic City, and I go every year. I've got to go to meet my colleagues and get caught up on what's new in my surgical, techniques. And Dr. Bob's wife, Ann, said, Bill, don't let him go. Bill, I'm begging you, don't let him go. He gets drunk every year. Please don't let him go. And Bill said, you know what? We're going to let him go because we got to learn how to live in society. We've got to learn how to stand on our own feet. So Bob went to that medical convention, and sure enough, he went on a bender. He went on a couple of day blackout drunk. He came back in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning. He couldn't even call his wife. He called his nurse. And his nurse came down to the train station. The nurse called up Bob's wife, and Bill said, come get him. He's dead drunk. By the way, he's got surgery in the morning. He did the first part of the surgery. Nobody else on the staff is going to be able to do it. It's got to be Dr. Bob. So they took Bob back. They coffeed him, they walked him, they coffeed him all night, sobered him to the best of their ability. Bill drove Dr. Bob to the hospital. And Dr. Bob said, I can't do it. I can't operate. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill the guy. Bill reached in the back of the car, took out a couple of bottles of beer, said, drink this, you'll be okay. Bob drank the beers, went upstairs in the hospital. He did the surgery, and the surgery turned out okay. But Dr. Bob disappeared. So Bill's waiting in the car. You know, it's the afternoon, 2, 3, 4. Bob doesn't show up. Bill goes back to the house. No Dr. Bob. Bill says, damn it. I gave him the beer. The allergy kicked in. He's off on another bender, right? Late in the evening, Dr. Bob shows up at the house, and he's stone cold sober. Bill goes, where in the hell have you been? Dr. Bob goes, I've been going up and down the street making amends to those I've harmed. That bottle of beer was the last drink that Bob took. June 10th, 1935, that's AA's birthday. You see, Bob had been unwilling to make amends to people. He did not finish his steps. He had been unwilling to make amends to people because he was afraid that he would lose what little was left of his medical practice. He was afraid people would find out that he was an alcoholic, but people already knew. They already knew. And the day Dr. Bob screwed up enough courage to make his amends was the day he took his last drink. So I say if that's good enough for Bill, it's good enough for Bob. I think it's good enough for us. Right? AA's founding day, June 10th, 1935. So the book tells us we do direct amends, and it says direct amends wherever possible. It does not say, people read that as make direct amends whenever. If you tell an alcoholic to do something whenever, it'll never get done. It's wherever possible. Their office, their house, wherever you see them. And the book says we do it eyeball to eyeball, face to face, person to person, one-on-one. Except when to do so would injure them or others, right? So if I write a letter to somebody or I give them a phone call, I'm not quite sure how they took it because I haven't seen their eyes. So I'm still going to be afraid to see these people on the street. That's why we do it eyeball to eyeball if at all possible. So again, we've got to ask our sponsor. One of the benefits or one of the things we do when we make these amends, right? You know, I want to say, hey, I hope you like me when I'm done, but that doesn't matter whether the person likes me or not. Again, the success of the amend is not contingent upon the outcome. One of the things I want to do is I want to get rid of my guilt, my shame, my remorse, and my fear. And a letter or a phone call, I'm just not sure how that person took it, right? And again, if they say, hey, get the hell out of here and don't come back, I've done what I could, and I do not have to go back to that person ever again, right? And again, we want to say, I was wrong. I was wrong, right? Well, I don't want to say, I'm sorry. I was wrong. How can I do to fix it? Now, I'm going to write down these 3 little phrases. I'm going to give you 3 little phrases. These are just things you can try on people. The first one is, how can I help? Right? Somebody's pissed off at you. You get home. How can I help? That's one. Another good one is, I'm sorry you feel that way. And another one is, you may be right. Those are 3 little phrases that we can use instead of our defensive mechanisms. How can I help? I'm sorry you feel that way. You may be right. Right? And of course, in front of it all, you write, I was wrong. That's when we are wrong. We don't say that if we're not. But if we are, I was wrong. How can I help? I'm sorry you feel that way. You may be right. Right? Now again, they talked about owing money. Talked about alcoholics owing money. And some people say, John, if I pay them so much a week, do you know how long it's going to take me to pay off that debt? You know how long it's going to take me, and you know how old I'm going to be by the time I'm done paying them off? And I say, yes, I do. You'd be exactly the same age if you never paid them a penny, right? So we use time to our advantage, and we pay people off. If we pay a little bit every week or every month, we're going to wake up one day and everything's paid, and you're going to feel great. It took me almost 5 years. I paid $352.30 every 2 weeks. That's $704.60 a month. And I did that for 5 years. And I'm pretty much done now. As I do, I still occasionally remember some things that where I owe people money or something happened, and I take care of them as they come up, right? But I paid off my debts, man. I feel wonderful. Whenever I think about a step, like step 8 and 9, I study a little bit, and I, when I was looking at step 8 and 9 just the other day, I found some more stuff that I've done, right? So this is going to go on for the rest of my life. I discovered that I've ripped people off emotionally. I have abandoned friendships, and these people don't lie. I mean, college people, they abandoned friendships. People I worked with were terrified of me, right? So every time I look at this, I always find another 5 or 6 amends that I've got to do, right? And my ego is going to tell me that I don't need to go to these people. My ego is going to say, John, you don't know, go to these people. Hell, they're not even going to remember you, John. And maybe they did worse to you. So my ego is going to say I don't have to do it, right? But I do. One that came to me last year at this time, when I was in my drinking days, I went to prostitutes, right? So, how do you make amends for doing that? Well, you give some money to a woman's shelter, right? That's what you can do. I had a doctor that I tricked into giving me the maximum amount of pain pills that he could legally do. Right? I had this guy tricked, man. When I showed up to the doctor's office, the nurse would come out and say, "Can I get a wheelchair, Mr. Henry?" That's right? So this guy, he saw my records when I went into detox, and he was horrified, and he blamed himself. I went out to that guy, and the first thing he goes, "Oh my God, I almost killed you." I said, "Doc, I'm here to make amends to you. What I did was wrong. I fooled you into giving me these pills. That's on me. And I'm here to tell you that I'm never going to do that to anybody again." And that was me. And because the doctor he felt horrible until I went and saw him. He thought that he almost killed me, right? But that wasn't the case. So that guy was very, very happy. 20 years ago, when I stole money from a business, and the business is no longer in that form anymore, so I can't make amends to those people. So what did I do there? There was a family that was broke, and over last Christmas, Thanksgiving and Christmas, I sent them about $1,000, 500 at Thanksgiving and 500 at Christmas, right, to make amends for my theft that I couldn't write because that business was gone, right? So we do things to put right some wrongs through acts of charity, right? We send good things out into the universe, we help others, we be kind, we donate, and then what we do is we give God credit for everything, right? So the benefit when we do that, we are now able to walk into a storm. We're able to walk in a storm, and we're able to be a spiritual warrior, right? Peacemakers, we seek disturbance. We can now do stuff that we could not before do. I'm gonna reread the promises, and I'm gonna put a few words in. I'm gonna change them around a little bit. So this is back in my drinking days, right? Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I knew a new freedom and a new happiness. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I did not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would comprehend the word serenity and I would know peace. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, no matter how far down the scale I had gone, I could see how my experience would benefit others. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity would disappear. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in my fellows. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, self-seeking would slip away. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, my whole attitude and outlook upon life would change. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, fear of people and of economic insecurity would leave me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would suddenly realize that alcohol was doing for me what I could not do for myself. Alcohol was my solution, right? When I took a drink of that, because I was a shy kid, all of a sudden I got taller, I got better looking, I was a great dancer, I was an expert on many subjects, I could talk to the girls, and the biggest thing of all, it was okay to be me, and I could come out and play, right? No wonder I liked to drink. Alcohol was magic for years. It did all of these things for me. One day, however, alcohol turned against me. It turned against me, and I became very confused, right? Because I could never get that magic back, right? I went on using for 20 years, and alcohol almost destroyed me. It took away my relationships. I crashed 10 cars. It got me fired. I got thrown in jail. I got cut out of a will. I was disinvited to things. It took away my freedom, my health, my will to live, right? It almost destroyed me. You guys gave me a book and a program of action I began to apply to my life. And one day I woke up and I found these promises in my head, right? And I suddenly realized that the first 9 steps of AA are doing just exactly for me what alcohol used to do for me when alcohol was my friend. Right? The first 9 steps never turned against me like alcohol did. I've never been in jail because of the first 9 steps. Never lost a job because of the first 9 steps. Never crashed a car. Never wanted to kill myself. Never threw up. The first 9 steps never caused me to get the hell beat out of me, right? So all of these promises, they deal with the mind, not the body. We come here restless, irritable, discontented, filled with fear, guilt, shame, remorse, worry, anger, depression, etc. We work the steps, we receive the promises, right? So again, I got to go back to Eric, who was here on the 4th step. He sobers up. In sobriety, he gets divorced. He gets cancer, they give him a year to live. He can't work, he loses his house. He runs out of money. He loses his job. The doctor makes a mistake in his file, so he's not getting any disability for 2 years. And you say, Eric, how are you doing? And he says, I've never been better. What the hell? I've never been better. That's because he's got the promises right here. And he knows he's going to be okay. And he's got the faith, right? You know, he did right before he went back to Iowa to stay with his mom for a couple of weeks. Finally, he's getting his disability. Thank God, after 2 years. So, and again, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us, right? So I'm going to read a little prayer from the Dalai Lama, I believe it is. Relinquish your envy and your desire to triumph over others. Instead, try to benefit them with kindness, courage, and have confidence that in so doing you will meet with success. Welcome others with a smile as if they are a close friend. And if for some reason you cannot, then do no harm. Try to help those who are downtrodden. Do not look away from those whose appearance is disturbing. Try not to think of them as less or yourself as better. May we become at all times, now and forever, a protector for those who are without protection and a guide for those who have lost their way. You know, I'm gonna end with the story of this guy. He goes to the doctor and he says, Doc, I think I'm dying. And the doctor says, yeah, you got a bad infection, and you're probably going to die unless you take this penicillin as prescribed in this course of action, right, that I'm giving you. You got to follow this course of action. And the guy says, well, Doc, what if I don't believe it'll work? The doctor says, it doesn't matter. If you take it, you're going to get better. And the guy says, well, Doc, what if I don't understand my infection or how the penicillin works? It doesn't matter. If you take it, you're going to get better. Well, Doc, what if I don't believe it will work? It doesn't matter. You take it, you're going to get better. Doc, what if I only take the first 3 days course of action and then I take it on the 12th day, right? People that do steps 1 and 2 and go to 12. He said, then you might die. Right? He said, Doc, how about if I show up your clinic every day for 90 days in a row and I watch other people take it and get better, but I don't take it myself? He says, you're going to probably die. Come back when you're closer to death and maybe you're going to be a little bit more willing, right? Well, I was the patient and you guys in AA were the doctor, man. And when I finally came back near death and I took the whole prescription, I got better. So that's it on 8 and 9.
Can you make a copy of that prayer for us?
I got a copy somewhere. I'll find it. It's actually, all you got to do is Google the Dalai Lama prayer. Yep. And it's what did I say here? It's it's the Dalai Lama prayer. And go. I found it by saying, relinquish your envy and your desire to triumph. That's how I found it. I heard somebody say it one day. So, big thing, 8 and 9, man. Do not do anything without advice from people. So, guy, I'm sorry, I forgot to read this. This I still have a few minutes. This is a letter from Bill Wilson. They say 10th step, but I say step 6 and 7. Bill Wilson, a group in Chicago, heard about some things that Bill was doing, and they mailed him a letter and said, Bill, you're a horrible person. Some of these things you're doing, right? They were taking his inventory. Bill was 26 years sober, so he wrote the Chicago group a letter back. This is from Bill Wilson, 26 years sober. They wrote Bill a letter and read him the Riot Act, right? That you seem disillusioned with me personally may be a new and painful experience for you, but many members have had that experience with me. Most of their pain has been caused not only by my several shortcomings, but by their own insistence on placing me, a drunk, trying to get along with other folks, upon a completely illusory pedestal, a station which no fallible person could possibly occupy. I'm sure that you will understand that I've never held myself out to anybody as either a saint or a superman. I have repeatedly and truthfully said that AA is full of people who have made more spiritual progress than I ever or can make. That in some areas of living I had made some decided gains, but in others I seem to have stood still. And in still other ways I may have gone backwards. I am sorry that you are disillusioned with me, but I am happy that even I have found a life here. Fantastic. It's from Bill Wilson. That's it. Let's end with the 7th step prayer. So we're on the 7th step prayer, what page is that on? Page 76, 7th step prayer. So, my Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. All right.